Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to show you how to apply a patch to your clothing. This is the same method as you'd use for all kinds of clothing, as long as the garment is not stretchy. I'm personally applying a patch to repair a hole in my jeans, which happens to be in an area suitable for adding a patch to. If you're adding an iron-on patch and you're placing it onto fabric that's not damaged, simply position the patch on the fabric and then iron the back of the fabric in that area. This will melt the glue on the back of the patch and fix it in place. You can then skip ahead to the sewing step later in the video. If you're using the patch to cover a hole, like I'm doing, then you'll also need a small piece of woven fabric similar in material to your clothing. I'm using denim in the same colour as my jeans, but that's not necessary. Any light or medium weight woven cotton would work. Plus, you'll need some iron-on fusible web and ideally either fray check or pinking shears. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut out a shape from both the fusible web and woven fabric that's more than big enough to cover the hole in the jeans. Because these shapes aren't symmetrical, I drew a line on both fabrics whilst they were held together, so I can realign them later on. Not crucial, but helpful. You'll then need to trim the fusible web so that it becomes slightly smaller than the fabric shape. I applied fray check around the outside of the fabric patch to try and help prevent the edges from fraying. If you don't have fray check, you could just cut around the edge with pinking shears, or if you have a sewing machine, you could sew around the edge with a zigzag stitch instead. Once that's done, use some sharp scissors to cut out any frayed edges or damaged fabric so there's a clean edge in your clothing. Next, cut a hole in the centre of the web that's slightly larger than the hole in the clothing. Then turn your clothing inside out. Position the web around the repair, like so. Then add the fabric patch on top, making sure it completely covers the web. Then press with an iron, following the instructions on your packet of fusible web. Mine said to steam press on the wool setting for 10 seconds. Once it's fused, leave this to cool. As a side note, if you're using a sew-on rather than iron-on patch, I would recommend attaching the patch first before sewing with a piece of fusible web. Just sandwich it in between the patch and your clothing, then apply an iron onto the back of this area to melt the web and fix it all in place. Now turn the jeans right side out. Then place the patch where you want it to go. Put a pressing cloth or piece of light woven fabric, such as calico, on top, and then press with your iron for about 10 seconds. The reason I like to have fabric between the iron and the patch is just to make sure that the patch doesn't get damaged at all. Once this has cooled down, it's then time to sew the patch around the edge. Note that just ironing on a patch will not be particularly durable, so make sure you don't avoid the sewing step, particularly if the clothing will be washed in a washing machine or subject to wear and tear. To do this, you'll need a sharp hand sewing needle and a strong thread, preferably in the same colour as the edge of your patch. Cut about an arm's length of thread and feed one end into your needle. And then come up through the patch very close to the edge. Pull most of the thread through, but leave enough to tie in a knot on the edge. Once you've tied a knot, snip off the excess and/or hide the end of the thread under the patch. Then repeat the following again and again. Take the needle down into the fabric right next to the edge of the patch, then come up through the patch a few millimeters from the edge. Move a short distance along the edge. Take the needle down into the fabric right next to the edge of the patch and come up through the patch a few millimeters from the edge. And so on all the way round. This is called whip stitch. Try and be consistent as you sew around the edge so you come up about the same distance from the edge each time. As you sew, it's best to have your hand inside the clothing to separate the layers so you don't accidentally sew through multiple layers. Or you can just put a piece of cardboard inside instead. Try and space the stitches evenly all the way around. Once you get to the end, push the needle through the edge of the patch to the inside of the clothing. There, I take the needle into and out of the fabric to make a small stitch behind the patch. Tighten the thread until there's just a small loop. Take the needle through this loop once or twice, and then tighten. And you can repeat this once again if you wish. Then cut off the excess thread. And that's it, that's how you attach a patch to your clothing, whether you're repairing a hole or just adding an embellishment. I really hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.